I wanted to say, I am privy to, as a prophet, I'm privy to God's plan to raise up men in Australia that will do great things. And it just occurred to me, Daniel is in that path. And so the men, those of you men listening in Australia, God allowed you to experience certain things so that He can teach you. Some of you are wiser because you've experienced things. You have come out of anger, drunkenness, and chaos, drug addiction, and God is repositioning you right now in Australia. Hey, Daniel, I kind of like you a lot. I wish one of these days I'm going to go to Australia and make sure I hang out with you. You're a fun and cool guy to talk to all the time. I've talked to you twice now, and I really enjoy it. My name is Henry, and I think you call me Henry Wakanda, so expect some magic from me. I think you practiced my last name, but you still called it Wakanda, Henry Wakanda. That's interesting. I'm Henry Nwaneri. I'm from Nigeria. I'm Canadian. I've been in Canada for almost 25 years now. I pastor the church in Canada, Ontario, for 7 years, and then God urged me to begin to do something else, which is travel. So I kind of metamorphosed or transformed or transitioned from a pastoral calling to an apostolic calling with a prophetic bent. In the past 20 years, I've traveled to over 40 countries with the gospel. I've written a lot of books. I think it's about 55 now. And I am a worshiper as well. I love to worship. I love to sing. I just was telling Daniel that in my link, and he was dancing to some of my songs. But it's you can find it on Apple, Spotify, iTunes Music as well. My books are on Amazon.com or booksbypastorhenry.com. And my forte is to talk about prayer and the spiritual awakening or revival, as some of us will call it. It is my goal, it is my passion to inculcate that culture in the body of Christ. I look forward to chatting with you on some other things today and some of that as well. I'm sure we're going to have fun.
Yeah, for sure. So, Henry, the gist of the show is, or the style of the show is, we're talking about resilience and overcoming hardship and some of those things, but we also talk about success and where people have, gone with their life. So let us talk about, some of the things you've overcome and some of the hardest times that you've faced and how you got through that and what was it like for you in that time in your life?
Let me look at, there's something you asked me that my mind just went somewhere. The toughest things personally that I have had to and continuously overcome is following a pattern that I already know and saw, already assessed that was not supposed to be my pattern. That's not supposed to be my path, my destiny. That's for me. And there are three ways that happens to all of us. The first way it happens to us is if it has happened before and we came out of it, but it's now happening again. And I'll give examples. And the second way is if it's something that is hereditary, like, I don't want to sound very spiritual in the beginning now, but if it is hereditary, if you're a man, something your father did or something your fathers went through, and you are now kind of under, I don't want to say a spell, but under ancestral, what's the word I'm looking for? Ancestral supervision, to make sure your life and your destiny and your path goes in the way that your father's path went, or your brother's path. It happens to twins, one got drunk and, messed up and, went to jail and stuff like that. And then the other one, who was a police officer, before you know it, life begins to toe that path again, so that's the second way it happens. And the third way it happens is peer pressure, friends, and influence. It happens and you get out and then you think you've overcome it, you go to rehab and clean up and all of that, and then it starts happening again. So for me, it was something that happened to my father that I've had to deal with, and it's not, in this case, I'm dealing with it not more of making the mistakes my father made, but fighting the thoughts in the minds of others, especially close people, family members, who look at you and say every step of the way, what they're doing is comparing you and your father. They're looking at your dad, okay, is anything he's doing close to what his father did, that kind of a thing. So that for me is one of the toughest things I've had to break away from, and maybe we'll dig a little deeper and, pick it out and, make it clear, because it's something very phenomenal with a lot of people, just breaking the chains of repetitions and cyclical, events reoccurring because of the ancestral supervision that is making sure you toe certain paths.
Yeah. No, I agree with what you're saying, and it's like I know it talks about that stuff in the Bible and curses and generational stuff, but even just anyone, whether they're a Christian or not a Christian, it's plain as day. You can see it that you know what I mean. The way you were brought up and your environment and those things that are me personally, I'm trying to break some of the cycle from my upbringing, and not I was very lucky. My mum and dad were great people. I'm not saying they were bad, but certain struggles and generational things that I want to be able to overcome, so my daughters have a better future as well. So it's a real thing. Let's dive a little bit deeper into what you're talking about. Can we talk a little bit more about Pacifics, or is it sort of you don't want to talk about that?
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I can talk about it. So, my father was very rich. I grew up in a very wealthy family. My father was an architect and a surveyor. He would design things, and the last thing I know he designed was a dam. He was the kind of person that very ingenious, very industrious, very strong. The image I have of my father is that of a very strong man. That's
Wow.
one positive thing. The other positive thing image I had about him was he could be very angry, And so I was very conscious not to copy his life, not to mimic him in a lot of ways. A very educated, intelligent man, very hardworking. I
Yeah.
copied a lot of that. One other area that he had a problem was he could not, there was a certain level of wealth that he had, and it's supposed to have bought us peace, bought us a lot of things, but he had issues, according to my mom, because of how he got his money. And so he became, how do I say, he disappeared after a while, just disappeared, and left everything, that was something that I had to deal with. Disappearing, getting up, and losing wealth. Let's put it that way. You build up and you trade away. You build up wealth and you trade away. You build up wealth and you trade away. And it happened to me once. I had a warehouse in a city that had stuff valued at almost $100,000, and I just literally left all of it. I stopped paying the rent to the warehouse. They called me, held it for a year and a half, 2 years, then they auctioned everything. 200,000 worth of machinery and stuff in a warehouse, 100 feet by 200 feet sized warehouse. And I just ditched it, because I was going through something and I felt, let me hold my peace, And then when I saw that happen, after it had happened, I said to myself, I learned a lesson. I said, you never gather wealth by scattering wealth. And so that's one thing I can teach people. 5 ways that we scatter our wealth. You won't become a millionaire if you are not careful with $1. If you're very good at throwing away $1, you cannot become a millionaire. So I have a lot of experience in that area now, because I have had to, when I saw it happening again, I'm like, no way, I consciously fight for my wealth now, because any wealth you lose, you have to go back to make it. A lot of us spend our life and our time going back to make wealth. But if you're able to hold on to what you have, it's like a ladder. You can only take the next step. There are so many things that make us lose or forfeit the wealth we've accumulated. Let me give you a good example. If you go through a divorce or breakup and it gets cantankerous, or you go to court, there's a tendency you will throw wealth away. There's a tendency, if you're not smart, if you're not wise, if you're not patient, if you're not careful, disciplined, there's a tendency that you throw wealth away. Another one is, if, for instance, if you're sick. A lot of people, when they are sick, they give up on paying their bills. Their credit goes down. They like the warehouse, for instance. A lot of people don't pay for storage and stuff like that. Another one is lack of planning, lack of organization. Some of us have a 1-bedroom house, but we have storages that we keep the storage business going, because we have 4 storages. We have one here where we put this stuff, we one here where we put this stuff, and then we're still buying. We're not organized enough to know, I've got this in this one. But every time you need it, you're not mentally strong to go look for it. You don't know where it is. You don't want to look for it. So you go buy it. And you've bought something. You think 5 times, you're wasting money big time, And sometimes it's not a small thing. It's like It's like a skill saw, $320. You just run to Home Depot. I'm going to return it after I use it, 2 days, and then you never return it, and then it's yours. You spend 300. So, and that's how wealth is accumulated and useless, because we don't build to the next level. We stay stuck going back to rebuild, going back to rebuild. If you never finish a building and you keep rebuilding, that house will never be a home to live in.
Yeah, yeah, I relate to that. Even with small things, like if you're not keeping track of your tool and your gear and different bits and bobs, and sometimes it's easier to go to the shop than sort of find where it is. So you got to really, make sure you're keeping track of your stuff. But what was your mindset? You must have been going through a bit of stuff. I mean, for someone to have $100,000 worth of stuff and leave it in a warehouse, like you must have been going through a really rough patch in your life. What was sort of happening at the time, or was it more just you were young and
I went through a divorce.
Okay. Yep.
So there were three unique things to my divorce. The first one is that it was a cultural shock for me, coming from Africa and being a Christian from when I was about 10, 11 years old. Divorce, I had made up my mind it was the last thing that would ever happen to me. I had made up my mind it was the last thing that would ever happen to me. And so one of the lessons I've learned from how I handled my divorce was, when it happened, I became spiritually smart, but foolish in every other way. Because what I did was, I said, God, I'm going to pray and intercede. So for 3 years, I was interceding. Heal my ex, bring her back, whatever the problem is, destroy it, because I didn't do anything, So I spent 3 years interceding. And in those 3 years, I shut everything down. I shut a business that had about 12. I had 12 workers in my business. And so the warehouse, for instance, I had machinery that could do a lot of things. I had trucks. I had all the toys. I had even personal fun toys. I had a jet ski. I had 2 jet skis. I had a sailboat. With a 325 horsepower engine. So if you know boats, you know what I'm talking about. I had all those things.
What was your business, Henry? What were you doing? You said you had some machines.
I was
Well, so landscaping business or something? I think you might have mentioned the other day.
The general contractor, and as a general
Yep.
contractor, then we strove to do literally everything, because if you get it, you can do it yourself or you sublet it to somebody else. And if you can do it yourself, you just hire the guys to do it. So I usually would get contracts from the city, from the regional municipality government and stuff like that. And sometimes it would be like my biggest contracts were like with the university. They would ask me to go in, clean out all the rooms in between sessions, clean out all the rooms, refurbish them, repaint them. And sometimes it would be, $1 million contract and stuff like that, and then I'll have to hire like 50 people to work in 2 months, because you flip, from the summer classes to the winter classes, you have to finish it all in 2 months. And so you hire all of those people and get it done. So sometimes it was wiser to just buy the equipment instead of renting. And then when you buy and buy and buy, then you have to store it. So the warehouse came in, and I had to use, a permanent warehouse, and before I knew it, and the other thing, what led to it was, sadly, this was another way I learned the lesson. I remember there was a particular year, I think in 2005. In 2005, I made $19,000 from selling the things I found in the rooms in the university. Dollars from selling PlayStations, freezes, vacuum cleaners, fans, air conditioners, DVD players, all those kinds of things. Kids would just leave it and go home, after the end of the year. And I'm supposed to clean out all of those things. And in the beginning, I was throwing them out. And then I just said, you know what, this is money. So I started keeping it. And so the warehouse became, and that's how we accumulated stuff. One year, I made $19,000 just reselling things I picked up from rooms. Can you believe that? So the funny thing, the lesson was that next year they would ask their parents for the money to buy those things again. And I just figured it out. If you're rebuilding every year, you never get to the next level.
I gotcha. Yeah, cool. But when you had a bit of a contracting business, or not a bit of a contracting business, a successful contracting business, when you finished school, did you do like a business degree, or did you go into a trade, or how did you sort of get those skills and that mindset?
I come from the part of Nigeria. They say we are naturally were natural born business people, from my eastern
Yep.
part of Nigeria. So I didn't read business. I actually read history, and then I read history and admin, and then I read international relations in my master's degree, and then I went and did a diploma in Christian leadership, and then got a degree in Christian leadership and ministry. When I found out that didn't want me to go in the path that I wanted to go, I just left it and followed the Lord.
Yep. Yeah, beautiful, beautiful. So what was the turning moment from that sort of situation when you were, you know, you divorced and, you had all the stuff in the warehouse and obviously would have been a period of, I don't know if it was depression or anxiety and some of those feelings. How did you turn it around? How did you sort of get back on your feet and say, I need to keep going? What was that like?
Well, it wasn't depression. Was I depressed? No, I wouldn't. I wouldn't call it depression. It was self-induced
Okay.
spiritual whatever, because I just told myself I'm going to pray my way out of this situation, and I did that for three
Yeah.
years. But after a year, God turned my attention from that to me. That was what happened. So the last 2 years of that 3 years of just waiting on God was me becoming a different man. you know um in the early part of the divorce, I thought I was a perfect man. I thought I was the best man any woman would have. I was good. I wasn't bad in any conscious way that I knew of. But in the last 2 years, God taught me so much more. And so it became an opportunity for me to build on a foundation that God wanted me to build. So I came out of all the doldrums of decay and depression. There wasn't much depression. It was just sadness,
Mm.
regret, loss, and all of that. I came out of that with a new sense of life, with a new being. My joy was kind of renewed and rekindled in a way that I can't describe. My passion for life and the things of God just took on a new dimension after that, and I've not looked back since then.
Yeah, beautiful. So you've written some books and you're leading a church now. You're also doing some music. Looking back and sort of over your life, what's some of your really proudest moments?
Whew. So my greatest, or the things I'm most proud of, are my encounters with God. I've
Mhm.
had some amazing, amazing encounters. I've seen angels about 3 or 4 times in my life. I've had a vision. I went to heaven once. It was profound. It was so real in the sense that it felt real until I realized it wasn't real, but it left such an indelible mark on me. I've had heavens open, not just to me, well, with a group of people, angels flying around in heaven with 14, 15 people, all of us seeing it. And that just left a mark on me. That's what I would call my greatest achievement. Nothing else tickles my fancy as much as those because of the impression it left on me. I was telling you earlier on, in one of my encounters, I learned how to play the keyboard. And apart from playing the keyboard, there was something else I learned. I felt what angels feel when they worship God. And man, that's why when you asked me, I said I don't consider myself a musician, because when
Mm.
I say I'm a musician, I don't feel like that experience. But when I say I'm a worshiper, it gives me room to feel like what I felt. So my encounters are my ultimate achievements. Nothing else compares to them at all. I don't know that I've achieved a lot more in real life or in the flesh. I've done some great things. We've been talking about a business, so I've had a $1 million business before. I don't know what else anybody would call major achievements. Those don't really float my boat, but my encounters with God and the divine is always top on my list. If you talk about books, I've written quite a lot. One of them has done very well, but I've been writing. I'm prolific not because I want to sell or I'm interested in the sales. I'm prolific because I have something I want to say and I want to provide it in the written form. But the other reason why I write a lot is I feel that that's also the last avenue, the last platform that can be stifled. I was telling you about this earlier on. The
Mm.
time is going to come when you would need a license to gain access to the internet. Just because they can monitor it. There's, like now, there's a key that can shut down internet across certain countries. There is a key that can shut down certain websites. Your country can decide Facebook will not show up in this country and Facebook will not show in the country. They've blocked Twitter or X in Brazil. So for me, I write because, and I was telling you the other time, if you watch some movies, you will know that, for instance, books will be the last things that will be very precious. There will be a time Elon Musk one of the things he wants to leave on Mars is he's going to leave books on Mars. One of the flights will take a lot of books and create a library in Mars on the planet, because generations that will live there need to read what the history of what the people on Earth read, so that's one of the reasons why I write. My book can have it, but you can read it on your own. But if it's an audio or digital platform, someday it's going to be stifled, it's going to be shut down, and you won't have access to it again. So that's one of the reasons I write a lot, apart from the fact that I always want to say something. Always have a message I want to share, and I put it down in writing.
Yeah, that's great.
So your question was about what my accomplishment was. Like I said, I feel like my spiritual encounters are my pride and my joy.
No, that sounds amazing. And I mean, yeah, there's really nothing better than connecting with God, and you know what I mean. I get you. Yeah. What's next for you? What are you focused on now? What's your goals at the moment?
Interesting question. I want to escalate what I do to a global level now. I've been traveling. I preach in churches and gatherings here and there. But I'm hoping and working towards two things. The first one is I'm working towards a global gathering online where I want 1 million people online, just fellowshipping together, praying and worshiping together. And then maybe there'll be a portion of it that'll be in person, live, So, and the purpose for that will be to trigger a spiritual awakening of a certain kind. And that's what I'm working on. I'm working on that now. And I'm thinking that we'll be ready to execute in 2 years. There's a little bit of money involved to have the bandwidth and everything that we need to do, and then the connections that are necessary. We're looking at 1 or 2 cities where we can host it and go from there. Yeah, so that is something I want to do, and then I want to do it maybe every 2 years. Not every 2 years we'll have that kind of a gathering again. But the fun part of it is what people will take from it. So I want it to be like one gathering that birth things that begin to happen in our local assembly and in our local churches and stuff like that. So that's where I'm, and it's an overwhelming dream, but God doesn't give you small dreams.
What's one message for someone who, if they're going through a tough time, what would you say?
Wow, so I love that question because I like I told you, I've been just working on helping people come out of tough spots. So let me give you 1 or 2 things. First of all, you need to decipher what is the worst turn. What is the worst turn in that whole situation on you? When you do that, you become smarter. The problem we have is this, that when we go through a chaotic or tough time, we don't isolate the turns. We kind of just juggle everything. There's an emotional crisis going on that is attached to a financial situation, attached to a mental crisis and all of that. We don't isolate it. When you learn to isolate and compartmentalize your problems, you become a master of your life, a master of your situation. Let me give you a good example. Like I talked about when I was, I think finally I do tell myself it was a mistake, even though I know that the last 2 years I really learned a lot from God, and I tell myself I would pay all my wealth for what I learned and who I became. But one of the other things I've learned is that you don't have to lose everything to gain everything in life. It's a good bargain to lose certain things to gain certain things. It's a good bargain to buy wisdom, like the Bible says. But it's also a good bargain that when you have bought wisdom, your money is still in your pocket, if you know what I mean. Now, so what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to change your mentality, the mentality of anybody listening. You don't have to give up something to get something. You don't have to lose your sanity to stay in a relationship. You don't have to lose your joy to make money. I don't know what you're trying to give up to get something, But that's always what we do. We think in transaction mindsets. We have transactional mindsets. And so every time we're going through tough times, what we do is we try to transact. We try to exchange something for a little bit of what we want. And that's such a very wrong move to make. Here's what you're going to do. You're going to take the easiest thing that will make a change for you right now. But like I said, a change right now may not be the best thing for you. A change right now may not be the best thing. Let me give you some real data examples, so maybe that would help. If it's a financial situation, let me tell you 3 things that you need to do. Number 1, stop spending too much money on food. Actually, stop spending too much money on yourself. If you're looking for where your money is going to, like I said earlier on, you can't have $1 million in your account if you're careless how you spend $1. You can't. And I'm not saying be stingy or that kind of thing, but just be very calculated. If you want to come out of a serious financial problem, get very calculated. It's wrong not to know how much money is in your bank account. It's wrong to swipe your bank card and then say, oops, really, there's no money. Then you try to log on and check your bank account on your... No. You need to know and by the time you start counting and start saying, I'm not going to spend money doing this. I'm not going to spend money doing this. That's when you're able to save. If you're able to save, if you're able to accumulate a little bit, you can get out of your financial problem in 1 month. There's something this guy does. What's his name now? What's the name of the 10X guy? You know him, 10X, the guy that started the 10X thing.
Yeah,
I've
I know
forgotten
him.
his name. I'm drawing blank.
Yeah,
But
I'm going
he,
blank too. He
he,
builds buildings and stuff. Yeah,
yeah, he has this
Grant
thing he
Cardone.
does. Grant Cardone.
Grant Cardone.
Yeah.
Yeah,
He has the thing he does. He says somebody challenged him. If I take you to a city, I don't give you your bank cards, you don't have no bank account, you have nothing. He said, can you start from afresh and make $1 million? He said he can do it in 30 days. And he teaches people how to start from nothing and make $1 million in 30 days. I thought it was a very interesting challenge. So a lot of us should look into and take. But the truth remains that if you don't learn how to start from the scratch and eliminate your carelessness, eliminate your absent-mindedness, eliminate your laziness, you can rebuild. There is nothing you have lost that you cannot gain back if you work hard. Nothing.
yeah,
Nothing.
yeah.
Believe in yourself is also very important. Don't chicken out. Don't change yourself. Don't second guess yourself. Wake up every morning. Tell yourself, I am here, but I'm going there. Don't say, I don't want to be here. I don't want to be here. No, the time you're wasting saying, I don't want to be here is the time it takes to get back up there. You need to say, okay, this is where I am. I'm not going to be here for long, but I'm going to go there.
Yeah.
Let's not fight
Yeah, I love
where
it,
you
Henry.
are. Fight to get out of where you are. That's an advice. That's something I'll tell anybody.
Yeah, I love it. Henry, we'll close the meeting. The internet's really bad, but what I'll do is I'll leave links to all your stuff and the books on the content. And I think what we'll do is we'll do another show in the future, and we can have a little bit more of a deep dive and a conversation and get to know each other a little bit better. I apologise everyone for the internet connection. Any final closing words?
Final thoughts. I have a bunch of things I would have loved to say, but I'm just going to say one. I was telling Daniel that I've got this thing I want to say concerning Australia and some of you guys. And I wanted to say, I am privy to, as a prophet, I'm privy to God's plan to raise up men in Australia that will do great things. And it just occurred to me, Daniel is in that path. And so the men, those of you men listening in Australia, God allowed you to experience certain things so that he can teach you. Some of you are wiser because you've experienced things. You have come out of anger, drunkenness, and chaos, drug addiction. And God is repositioning you right now in Australia because your voice is going to be amplified to the nations of the earth. And Daniel, I feel that strongly for you. Just do what you're doing faithfully, man. Just do it faithfully. I see one day you're going to get a call and it's going to be a door that will shock you. I mean, shock you to your bone. You'll be like, what is this? It will change literally everything. Today you're talking in hundreds, you'll be talking in millions. You won't jump to thousands, you will be talking in millions. You're going to sign contracts that will blow your socks off. But just be faithful where you are right now, man. And there's a lot of you like that in Australia. God is raising you up for a purpose. So get ready for it.
Oh, that's a really powerful message, Henry, and I really, really appreciate that. And I think you're right. I've got a lot of mates that, been through a lot of prisons and, institutions and whatever else. And some of my mates are really strong, powerful men of God. They're actually some of the guys probably further in their Christian walk than I am. But yeah, you definitely give me courage and strength to keep going and keep learning the things of God and even talking to yourself and connections and meeting people. I think that's all part of it. So that gives me great encouragement. So thank you very much, Henry. We'll definitely talk again. Sorry, everyone, about the internet connection, but let's wrap it up and we'll sign off. We'll see you on the next one. Thanks, guys. Cheers, Henry.
Thank you.